Should be good.
Okay. Do you want to run through kind of like just basic rules of how these work, since you've done through several of them already?
Yeah, sure. For our
The
participants,
audience.
for the audience, what we're going to do, I'm going to keep it spotlighted on you, Mark, though, because I don't like the spotlight. That's not true. I do, but I don't like it on Zoom. We're gonna run through introductions initially of all our panelists. They're each gonna introduce themselves. And then Mark's gonna start by asking them some questions. Again, as I said, feel free to start putting your questions in chat. We love it when we get those questions. It really makes it a lot more interactive. And then, you know, towards the end, we'll ask you to unmute. And if you have additional questions, we're happy to hear them directly from you as well. This is being recorded, so please keep your mic on mute so that we don't pick up the background noise. And Mark, you can, I think, take it away from here.
Thanks, Carol. And thank you, all of you, for taking your time to be on Zoom for probably the 24th meeting of the day for all of you, except for Emma, who's on the West Coast. It's only like the 21st meeting. So in case you don't know me, I'm Professor Marc Tomljanovich. I'm Executive Director of Business Programs here at Drew University, and I've been here since 2006. I came because of Drew's, distinctive Wall Street semester program, which is something just nobody else I had seen had. It was such a tremendous opportunity to really be able to get to know my students and help them figure out their path in a way that was just so much deeper than any other place I'd ever seen. So that really intrigued me. Loved the people that I met in the community and decided to try it out. So I have been lucky enough to have hundreds of amazing students, most of them not as good as Emma, but so I'm actually thrilled that she is on the panel today. But the idea here is, yes, the audience can absolutely ask any questions that they want. We'd love those. And if they don't have questions, I have a million of them. So I think it makes the most sense kind of just to follow along with the invitation in terms of order. So I don't rock the boat, so to speak. But we have 4 amazing panelists today. We have Rob Falvo, we have Emma Grossman, we have Steve Schwartz, and we have Siwat Siengsanoah. And I'm sorry if I butchered that. From my point of view, I get that a lot too. And I just missed overlapping with you. But the idea is, let's each kind of go through one by one, talk about yourselves, kind of your path, where you grew up, why did you come to Drew in the first place? What did you do while you were here? And then how did that help launch the path to where you are now? So let's start with Rob.
Okay, thank you. I hope everybody's having a great day. My name is Rob Falvo, as he said. I was born in Trenton, New Jersey, was raised in Hamilton, New Jersey, and I am a class of '87, a political science major from Drew. I ended up at Drew because I was recruited to play soccer. And Drew, after visiting quite a few schools, Drew seemed like the perfect home for me. Met my Drew roommate my original Drew roommate at a soccer tournament that summer. So it all fell into line for me. And when I got to Drew, became a poli-sci major. Kind of took a lot of courses in philosophy. Probably if I look back, I probably easily, if I had any kind of real motivation at the time, could have been a philosophy minor. But I was more inclined to just get the degree and move on and get into the business world, which was really my passion. I started, do you want me to get into a little bit of career trajectory now, or did you want to wait on that?
You can, we'd love to hear about just a little bit of,
Okay.
How did you start? What did you have a vision, or was this all accidental?
Well, a little of both. When I graduated from Drew, I took a job in selling life insurance, 100% commission, independent contractor, because I was not inclined to have someone tell me how much I was worth. And I wanted to be in an environment where I could transfer my competitiveness from the athletic fields to a business function, and where I would be challenged, pushed, and that if I wanted to work 100 hours a week, I could, and if I wanted to work 20 hours a week, I could. Looking back on it, I never worked 20 hours a week. It was closer to the 70 to 80 hours a week, because I was in business for myself, but not by myself. I latched on to some mentors, even back then, for no good reason other than probably I was a little cocky. I saw myself as an executive at some point, and that vision became a reality as I stayed with the same company from Drew from 1987 till 2015 for the most part. And I worked my way up in the field, owned my own insurance agency, left that for 1 year. I had a connection, so I left the company for a year. The one time I left for a year, I went to work at Bell Atlantic because I had a Drew grad friend who got me a job at Bell Atlantic, and I stayed there for a year. Then the company I worked for right out of college as an independent contractor called me and asked me if I wanted to join the home office corporate staff. And I worked my way up from regional director up to become the executive vice president of the entire company worldwide. In 2015, I decided to take a couple years off, and I took 2.5 years off. And then in 2017, I actually went to work for a company in Morristown called ProSite Specialty Insurance. Again, the Drew connection comes into play because it was a friend of mine from Drew, 2 guys from Drew who founded that company, which is now a publicly traded company. So both of the times I was on the rebound from looking for a new career, they both drew university friend connections and networking that helped me through that. It made it, quite frankly, real easy. And right now I am currently self-employed and I'm a consultant, and my wife and I have our own consulting company. Most of my consulting that I do, and where we're putting most of our time in now, especially the environment we're in, is in direct sales and network marketing. We're doing that so we can build a global business, and we are running our passions of business and traveling, our personal passion of traveling the world, tying them together and using the great tax laws of the United States of America to achieve both.
Thanks, Rob. And I'm going to have plenty more questions for you afterwards to kind of fill in the blanks. This was a great introduction. Let me turn now to Emma Grossman. Emma, how's California today? Can't hear you. Oh.
California is gorgeous. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. It's about probably sunny and 75. So good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. My name is Emma Grossman, and I was born and raised a little outside of Los Angeles in Ventura County in a small town called Westlake Village. And you may wonder why a kid from Southern California ended up at a liberal arts college in New Jersey. Well, I was too short to play basketball at the University of Southern California, so Drew was recruiting, and I thought it was a good opportunity to head east and get away from my parents, because being 18, what more do you want than your independence, and play some basketball. So I ended up visiting the school with my mom and kind of fell in love with the campus and the idea of the forest. And I'm a really outdoorsy person, so it definitely struck me. While at Drew, I had the opportunity to be a part of the inaugural group to graduate with the brand new business studies major back in 2011. And then I continued my education at the University of Southern California, USC, with a master's degree in accounting, and then ultimately obtained certified public accountant licensure after that. Right now, I am a controller, which means I'm responsible to lead the accounting and finance activities at my company, reporting directly to the CFO. A lot of things, I guess, about my path that got me to where I am now. One of the reasons I chose accounting was for the safety. When I was at Drew, you know, we were going through one of the worst economic times in history. And so one of my strategies when choosing a career was to try to be as risk averse as possible. And for some reason, given the both quantitative and qualitative mix of analysis required for accounting, it seemed to fit me quite well. And I had sort of an entry to it my senior year, which I really enjoyed. So accounting spoke to me, and I thought I could use my economics and business degree and kind of build a skill set that hopefully would be the building block of something more.
Thanks, Emma. And before I forget to mention this, you know, one of the things that Emma and I have been in contact about this past year is Drew is launching new business majors. She mentioned the general business major, which launched back in 2009, and that is now by far our largest major. We have about 170 current declared business majors. But we've decided to continue expanding those because the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for some students. So there's students like Emma who, if there'd been an accounting major, she totally would have done it. So we're launching accounting this fall. We're launching marketing. We're launching finance. And so Emma and I have been in conversation about that accounting major, and we're really excited to have her continue helping us as we are able to bring a really distinctive curriculum to all these new students. So thanks, Emma. Steve, let's hear from you now.
Well, thanks very much, Mark, and good afternoon to everybody. Steve Schwartz. I am a graduate of the College of Liberal Arts, 1980. My background and my story about Drew is actually pretty cool. And last Wednesday, I had an opportunity to join the 110 symposium. And, you know, this has been an immersion since you canceled, and I know you didn't do it. Since my 40th reunion was canceled for June, I feel like I'm rejoining my olden days and my roots from way back. So I was born in the Bronx. I was brought up in Westchester County, New York. I went and did the college search after high school and knew early on I didn't like the big university environment. And I also knew very early on that I was going to be a psychology major. Absolutely knew it dead nuts on based on my temperament and what I thought I knew about the world then. So did a whole bunch of school visits, mostly in the Northeast, and really did love the forest and loved Drew, and went to a prospective students event in the fall of, I think it was like 1975. And it was at the Hotel Pierre when money was not important, I guess, and loved the environment. You had madrigal singers. Dan Boyer was the director of admissions, met him, connected, and it was a slam dunk for me to make the decision. Now, I come to Drew, you know, 18-year-old, wide-eyed kid looking forward to college, and I spend the first year just loving, but also realizing that I'm not sure what I want to major in, but psychology is where I want to go. Summer, right after school, freshman to sophomore year, had an internship at a business. Now, my dad was a business guy, a marketing guy, and I had an opportunity to work for a company over the summer. Came back to school in September and said to my advisor, who I believe was Dr. Vivian Bull, I said, I need to transfer. And she said, why? And I said, because I want to be a business major. I want to do something business. And I had that same vision that, you know, we heard of earlier from Rob, to be an executive and whatever in the world that ever meant, but I was going to join the business world. So I was told and advised that when my aspirations synced up with reality, I most likely would have needed an MBA. And your criteria for getting into business school and being attractive would be a strong liberal arts background undergrad and some work experience. So I was having a great time at school. I loved Drew University. And I said, you know what? If that's a formula, I'm sticking around. So through my 4 years, I did the economics semester in Brussels. My major was econ, and loved, 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 loved. You know, there's a lot of years between then and now, But 10 years after, 1990, I did get my MBA. I had gone 3.5 years at night previously and launched a career, which, to me is a classic business career. You start young in sales, you move up through some sort of field management. A lot of years later, today, I am Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a worldwide manufacturer in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So that's another whole story we probably don't have enough time for. But 10 years ago, I had a business trip here, found the love of my life, and moved to Sioux Falls. And it may sound peculiar or not, but Sioux Falls is actually a pretty civilized place. And it is 78 degrees and magnificent today. But it snowed last week. So long story short, and I can, wax poetic about a lot of years of work. What I found that I loved about the Drew experience was being what I like, I guess, in the world, being a little bit of a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Love the intimacy, love the closeness to professors and mentorships. And it propelled a career, which really I had no vision other than knowing I wanted to be in the business world, didn't know what I wanted to do, but knew that I wasn't going to be a doctor. I wasn't going to be a CPA, but I wanted to do something in sales and marketing. And, we have a lot of time on this couple of hours to go deeper into that, Marc, as you wish. But, fundamentally, kid born in the Bronx, lives in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Drew University alum. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Steve, I would much rather you keep it short, and then we can just pepper you with questions later to fill in the blanks.
Certainly.
And then last but not least, Siwat. And I'm actually really excited to talk to you because one of the things we're trying to really think about next as we expand business more is really moving into the entrepreneurial space. And so we're looking at new programs that absolutely fit in that area. And for us, just like with finance, just like with accounting and marketing, what is so important to that is having alums who are knowledgeable, who are great at what they do, and they're passionate about Drew, who can help us bring this to life. So thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me, Marc. So I grew up in Northern Jersey. I found Drew through my soccer coach and ended up coming to Drew to play soccer. I played soccer for 4 years. I came in as a computer science major and realized that wasn't necessarily what I was interested in. But what I really appreciated about Drew is I was able to take a bunch of amazing classes. And I was one of those people who didn't know what I really wanted. And I declared my major, I think, on the last day that you were able to at your sophomore year. I chose political science. It was a toss-up between anthropology and political science. I was an art minor, and I really enjoyed all the classes that political science had to offer, but I knew I just wasn't going to go to law school, and I wasn't going to be running a campaign for anyone. I finished Drew, and I did a internship that my junior year, and then during the summer of my junior and senior year, I was able to just observe the physiology lab at Columbia Medical Center, and it was just working with kids with heart and lung disease. And I realized that after Drew, I wanted to go to grad school, and I went to grad school for physiology, which was the healthcare background that I kind of immersed myself into, and I did that for 11 years. I ended up working at the hospital there, went to grad school there, worked with kids with heart and lung disease for a while. Was very clinical to start off with, then moved to management and overseeing a department, but then sitting at different committees and different meetings, I realized that I either needed to have some sort of public health degree or an MBA. Outside of work at the time, I had started a bunch of different companies, ranging from a magazine company, a social app, a music editing mobile app. All of them grew to a certain point and never hit critical mass. And just like all things with entrepreneurship and just trying things out and testing different hypotheses, you grow them up to a certain point, and every time you hit a certain wall, there's a lesson learned. I ended up going back to business school, and from there, did some consulting work after business school. in an ed tech company, ended up jumping on board after that with a digital healthcare startup accelerator, and that was an amazing experience. I took 10 young startup companies, put them together, really worked on every single aspect of their business. And back in 2016, I decided to start my own beverage company. The beverage company is called Recoup, and it's a plant-based health and hydration beverage that's geared towards daily wellness and hydration. And we are the only beverage that combines hydration with the benefits of ginger. So there's 2 teaspoons of ginger in our beverage that's been known to clinically prove to help with digestion, muscle soreness, aches and pains. And we've been in business for about 2 to 3 years now, and we're growing. So yeah, that's where I am. It's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Siwat. And you went to Cornell for your MBA?
I did.
All right.
I did, yeah.
Was it up in Ithaca, or was it after they moved to downtown?
So it was the executive MBA program. So it was here in New York. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just curious to see whether you got to experience all the snow.
Oh, so we had a residence program where we did spend a week up there, and it was a week during the summer and a week in the winter. And we definitely got the snow in the winter. Ithaca's cold. Very cold.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with a few questions, and each question is going to be directed to a different person. But after that first person answers, everybody else can kind of chime in with their own thoughts on it. And Carol, hopefully this helps you in terms of the spotlight feature. I'm going to start, and these are in no particular order. I was just thinking over the last few days about questions that the audience might be interested in. But I'll start with Emma. And I'm not fishing at all here. So answer this truthfully, not how you think I want this answered. But what classes or experiences at Drew do you think best helped you, either as you started your career or in terms of where you are now? Oh, can't hear you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's a great question. I would have to say the Wall Street semester for sure, 100%. I think you learn quantitative skills during the Wall Street semester. You're pushed academically, but you're also learning how to be a young professional, which is really something invaluable, right? You got to put a nice shirt on, a jacket, you put your nice shoes on, you're kind of commuting into the city. It gives you this feel of work and student life, but I think it gives you the right preparation for the business world, and overall a perspective on maybe what you do and don't want to do when you finish up at Drew. For me, that was the most valuable experience, hands down.
Thanks, Emma. So what? How about you?
I enjoyed a bunch of different classes, and like I said, I didn't pick my major until the last possible time. But I did enjoy. There was a revolutionary class in political science that I truly enjoyed. There was a Southeast Asian politics class that I enjoyed. The criminal justice class was always really interesting. I think anything I learned from Drew was that the classes were small, so professors were available. You can take the information that they provided with you. And I think I learned this a lot more at Drew, and having gone to other grad schools and other schools that were larger. With Drew, I was able to just connect with professors. So you take in that information that they gave you in the readings and the case studies and all these different things, but there's so much more to that after that. And since your professor is available to talk to you, you can kind of weed through the noise and really get to the topics at hand and see if these ideas, these topics could be applied in different areas and different topics and different times. And that was specifically with revolutionary theory, I think, and criminal justice and things like that. So those are the ones that stand out. The Southeast Asian politics class was really cool because it did emphasize the political environment in Thailand at the time, and I am Thai, so I do remember that quite a bit. I remember waking up very early to get to the registrar's office to register for Tom Kane's governing a state class. And that was an amazing class. That was by far my favorite class. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine the exposure to that would just be unparalleled. A few years ago, Carlos Jordan taught a course with, he team taught it with Governor Brendan Byrne. And so every week they brought in a different policymaker. And there was this one week, and I remember because I went to it, it was in SW Bown Hall, where they brought in Paul Volcker, who was the former chairman of the Fed before Alan Greenspan. And so having, and Tom Kane showed up also. So it was like these two former New Jersey governors and, the former, Fed chair, and just being able to chat with all of them about things like, and Emma, this was like in 2009. So it was right after the financial crisis, and hearing all of them talk about the impacts on public finances or on financial markets and the economy was just that type of exposure you can get in so few places. So it was great. Rob, how about you?
For me, I would have to say a UN semester. To kind of piggyback on what Emma said, I had to put on a suit and they would bus us into the city every Tuesday and Thursday. So we got that feeling of pretending we were important for a few hours. But it really raised my vision of what was possible. It gave me a better understanding of the world, that, United States, where it fits into geopolitics, especially at the time. It was pretty interesting back in the 80s. And it is where I actually had what I would call a life-changing moment. There was a fellow student who asked us if we wanted to have lunch with his dad in the city. So obviously, anytime someone said, "Can we have a free lunch?" I'm all in. Yeah, of course. So we met his father at lunch, and they took us up to the top floor of what was the Gulf and Western building, which is now Columbus Circle. I don't know, it's probably not called that anymore. And his dad happened to be the executive vice president of Gulf and Western, which is a company that owned Madison Square Garden. He had his own office and a wait staff that served us lunch. And that's when I thought to myself, oh, if he can do this, why can't I do this? And change my whole vision of what I wanted out of life and what I could get out of life, coming from immigrant parents who, whose goal coming to this country was just to get stable, right? So it changed my whole vision of what was possible and what I could accomplish if I put my mind to it.
Thanks, Rob. And Steve, last but not least, how about you?
So while my alumni colleagues are recounting their courses, I'm saying to myself, wow, what did I like? And I got to tell you, I have a similar thread of experience. The Brussels semester was fascinating to me. And there were two stories I'll tell you very briefly. The program was about the history, the economics, the politics, and then an independent study all about the common market, as it was called, now known as the EU. So we had a history professor who was brought in to teach the full course. His name was Jerzy Lukaszewski. He was the rector of the College of Bruges. He must have been, in my vision at the time, he must have been a 70-year-old, very thick Slavic accent, and he's telling us stories of his work in politics in the European community. And he's telling us, and one of his stories ends with, and I said to Charles, and Charles who? Well, he said to his friend, he was advisor to Charles de Gaulle. Now, back in those days, whoa, that's a pretty influential guy. It was no free lunch, but that was pretty darn impressive. The thing about the European program that I took advantage of was my course-long thesis, which was any topic you wanted to write about relative to European economics, business, politics, etc. And I was a junior during this. No, I was first semester senior when I did this particular course with the program, very much committed to the business track. And I wrote a paper, I did a research project with some friends of my family who were people working and running American companies in Brussels And the title was something about, American corporations, multinational corporations operating inside the common market. And so that was, again, it was a 4-month research project, interviewed executives, went to see American companies, and wrote, what I understood to be the paradigm of how American organizations run abroad. And that as an educational experience, and frankly, with what became my international business experience as well, was really very, very transformative and most memorable. I mean, I do remember my philosophy professor telling me on a Tuesday morning to put toothpicks in my eye. It'll help keep me awake. That was Dr. Hans Morsink. I'm not sure if he's around. Maybe
he's still
not.
on campus, yeah. So he wanted
Is he really? Wow, great.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I'm falling asleep on a Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock class. I'm like this in my seat, first row, and he says, "Use toothpicks, Steve. Keep your eyes open." So no kidding. Circa 1976 September. You tell him. He won't remember, but it did happen.
He actually might. He's such a personality. He's an icon, really, of the university. I love the stories that all of you have just told, because that echoes my experiences with my students. Whether it's the Wall Street program or whether it's taking my students abroad. I've actually been with Bernie Smith, who ran the Brussels semester a number of years before we transitioned into these short treks, these shorter term experiences. But he and I have taken students to Brussels, to London. I've been with other business professors and students to Tokyo. And we were supposed to go to Switzerland over this spring break, and it sadly got canceled 24 hours before we were supposed to leave. But we'll just do it next year or the year after. We'll see at some point soon. But what I love is talking to alumni like yourself. And let's face it, you don't remember like the little nitty gritty parts of class. Like there's no way you remember ISLM with the funny graphs. But what you do remember are these deeper connections that you've made to one another and these links to your professors. And they really are lifelong experiences. And that's one of the reasons that, still draws me so much to a wonderful place like Drew's community. So I'm going to change gears again, and I don't want to hog all of this. So I'm watching the time carefully. I'm going to ask one more set of questions like this, and then I might just open up to see what kind of questions there are from the audience. And if there are some, great. If not, I'm just going to keep going. And you can ask me questions too. That's good. I'm trying to decide right now whether I want to keep going into like a deep dive of your careers. I think I will with one more set of questions, but then I want to ask some broader questions about kind of what's going on right now. So let me do one more set of specific questions. And Steve, I'm going to actually start with you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the mistakes you've made at one of your jobs and how you recovered from that? What did you learn from that?
I'm trying to think about back to the mistake I've made in 40 years of working. Let me have a moment.
Sure.
I'm kidding, everybody. There's a million of them. But I think, and maybe this is relevant to being in a university conversation. When you graduate, when you're confident, when you have a good sense of self, you think you know what you need to know. And there are a million mistakes. I can't even begin to figure out which ones are most notable. But a theme, and let's call it within the first 10 years, is I really never knew what I didn't know. I had the privilege at 28 years old, 7 years after graduating, of being promoted into a managerial position for the company I spent the first 20 years of my career with. I was the general manager in New York City for this worldwide company, but I was 20 years old and I just didn't know. So I was promoted from a sales role. I was a performer, better than average, but I had a little bit of guts, helped them do some deal with the unions in New York in the electrical construction field, and they put me in charge. Well, I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know that management and leadership are different words. So, I think back about these very humbling days, and as I coach and mentor people that work for me in the business world these days, you reflect back on the fact that you'll never be able to gain on time. You can be very intellectually smart. There are some folks who graduate from college. You can be doctors, you can be lawyers, you can be accountants, you can be brilliant scientists. Academics and intellect are fabulous. They're half of the equation. But the other half of the equation is what I'm just going to call street smarts. And I can't tell you that you can't read a book and do management from a book. We have all gone to graduate school. We have textbooks up the yin yang. There are theories. There are great writers. There are great pragmatists. But at the end of the day, the experience or the mistake that I'm trying to articulate is that of really not knowing what you don't know, but thinking you do. And at the end of the day, especially when you work in the business world and you're accountable to financial metrics and you're accountable to real world results, if you don't know how to get there and you don't know how you didn't get there, you start to freewheel a little bit. And I've actually was humbled way back in the beginning. And today I do think back about that time. The company was called Simplex in the fire alarm industry. And I shudder to believe that I'm still standing because I was completely asynchronous with the management principles and with the leadership principles that I employ today as an experienced individual. But you don't know that until you go through it and you learn it. So I'm not sure if that's been a great answer for you, Mark, but it's a theme. It's a thematic answer that really plays to the notion that experience can be gotten one day at a time. You can't get one day at a time any quicker than one day at a time. So patience, know yourself, and don't fall into the pit of being so overconfident that you think you can substitute for the time you never had in the real world of doing the job.
Thanks, Steve. Who wants to jump in next? I can call on people. I'm really good at calling on people.
Listen, I've seen Steve and I have a similar path, and I can only say the same thing. I shudder when I think back. I actually, as I told you, started off in sales, and when you're an independent contractor in sales and in that kind of environment, and they see you have any inkling of above average skill set in sales, you immediately get promoted. I mean, I was literally promoted 6 to 8 months after I graduated, and took me many, many years, and it might be 10 years, I'm not really positive, to figure out that being a leader is being a servant, not vice versa. And I think back to all the people that I was asked to manage or lead at the time, and I feel sorry for them and wish I could apologize to them at the moment, one by one. I think emotional intelligence, in addition to academic intelligence, in addition to knowing your craft, is so important, because if someone asked me what would I change about my time at Drew, is I would change my major from poli-sci to psychology or sociology and or both. Why? Because without an understanding of other human beings and being empathetic and leading by example and being a servant rather than expecting someone to answer to your barks of do this, do that, you will hit a wall and you will not surpass that chasm that Steve spoke about.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that, because a couple of things that you said, especially near the end, just remind me that one of the things that we feel is so strong about our business program here is the interdisciplinary roots. So, for example, our new marketing major doesn't look a lot like marketing majors at other schools, meaning it's not like a pure cookie cutter, take these specific classes that are all purely business, but rather, it pulls in courses from, exactly like you said, from psychology, from sociology, from anthropology, because we think that's what's more important in some ways. And then they take the digital marketing classes and all the other classes later. Just because, again, just like you described, things are messy in real life, and you have to understand the psychology of the people that you're working with or against. So thanks. Emma, how about you?
Yeah, I think two things. One, if you're not making mistakes, you're not playing in the big leagues, and you're definitely not trying hard enough. You just have to have the humility when you do make a mistake. If you are a leader or a mentor or a manager to somebody, when they go ahead and make their own mistakes, to carry out that humility, right, that you would want somebody to have with you, and the courtesy to make a lot of mistakes, teaching moments. And that's where kind of just to piggyback on what's been said about emotional intelligence, this is when people have their most growth is when they're given these opportunities to improve. You know, no one remembers a great day. They remember a day where they really screwed up at work. And the reason you remember that is because it's so negative memories are so impactful to your outlook. And so if we as leaders can be in business and be coaching people and developing them and teaching them that, hey, this isn't the end of the world. This is just a teaching moment. You can grow from here and get strong from here. Because I think using threat in leadership is going to take you nowhere. Leading by example and trying to guide with empathy and understanding is going to take your whole entire team somewhere, because it's really, at the end of the day, about empowerment. For the team to be successful, each and every person has to find success in their role and happiness. And to create that, you have to create a safe environment for people to make mistakes.
Thanks, Emma. And how about you, Siwat?
Yeah, I would echo what everyone else said in regards to soft skills and EQ. I think that's very important. Having started companies before, failure is inevitable. It's just the way it is. It's how you overcome challenges and pick yourself up and start over. Things like that are always important. I think grit is important as well. But I think at the end of the day, I think in regards to managing people, I think when it comes to managing people, you should always the biggest step is to kind of get a better understanding of how you are and how you would like to be managed. What are you good at and how do you motivate people? And then having that empathy to understand that what's your team like? Some people need to be motivated differently. If you have a team of 5, a team of 10, a team of 20, each person needs to be motivated differently. Challenges sometimes are great for certain people. Support is great for certain people. And I think just understanding how you'd like to manage and what you're comfortable doing. People always assume that getting loud and firing off orders is the right way to go about it. If you're not comfortable doing that as a manager, just get a better understanding of how you would like to manage people. And then the rest, I think if you have that step, it becomes a lot easier to motivate your team, push them in the right direction so that everybody grows and make sure that nobody's left behind.
Thanks, Siwat. I appreciate that. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to do a 1-year fellowship in higher education, and I got to spend time with presidents and senior leaders at all sorts of universities around the country, all the way from community colleges to like R1 institutions like the Ohio State University. They're very particular about that. But what you're describing is exactly what you end up doing, is as you meet presidents and listen to them and see how they communicate, you start thinking, well, does that resonate with me? Is that how I want to be as a leader, is number one. And number two, the question is, well, can I do that? That person's amazing, but that just doesn't fit. I'm not comfortable with that, even though it works really well for them. And so I think always of both of those questions. So I guess let's pivot now, because probably participants are wondering this. It's impossible not to think about the current cataclysm in a way that's upon us in 2020, or as I like to refer to 2020, this year is just a dumpster fire. And so I would love to know, I guess, from the four of you, and starting with Rob, let's discuss the challenges that your industry is facing right now in the face of this global cataclysm. What changes do you think what changes are happening in this area, and where do you see this going over the next year or 2 years? I'm not going to go beyond that because
you want me to talk specifically about my industry.
I will open it and make it as free form as you want, but yeah, certainly talk about like what you're thinking professionally right now as it corresponds to what you're doing.
Okay. I am going to say something that may sound very strange. Since I graduated from college, I have only in virtually my entire career have been in the direct sales field, either in life insurance for a very brief amount of time, 9 months, but with cell phones, leading a team of people at Bell Atlantic, which is now Verizon, and then back in life insurance in the corporate side, overseeing the field. And now I'm in direct selling of network marketing in a biotech company in the health and wellness industry. Through 9/11, through 2008, I quite frankly have never been affected by the economy because of the fields I happen to be in. Life insurance is still moving and still growing. The direct marketing, since this has started, right now my wife and I are extremely busy because people are looking for options to build a business with low risk, low investment, and that they can build globally if they so choose, and they can do it virtually. So I actually have been, and for lack of a better term, affected them in a positive way based on what's going on currently, at least to this point. And so I can say that the career path that I chose, being, again, direct sales from beginning to end and all parts of direct sales to the public, I have not had a real downturn in my career at any point that I had to overcome and struggle through. Not the answer you're going to hear most of the time, but as I look back, I've been very, very blessed and very fortunate.
That's great to hear, really. How about you, Steve? What's happening in your area?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that, I'll tell you, I'm in the industrial, we're a manufacturer in the industrial roadside mowing, tractor-mounted attachments for municipals, highways, throughways, attachments for compact construction equipment for land management. And I mean, the business actually is not so bad right now, but I want to just reflect on the last 4 weeks. When this began and when the shutdowns began across the United States, I mean, my organization, we've got a dozen field reps who no longer can travel, 12 guys covering all of the US and Canada, and a 13th covering Australia and South America. Nobody can travel. We have a board of directors meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, and it's going to be a question of, so what are you doing? We're owned by private equity, very, very metrics driven. And what we've done at our executive level for the last 4 weeks is we have very, very quickly pivoted. We have a 50% remote workforce where we had a 0% remote workforce, other than the 12 guys in the field, but we have about 150 employees. So relatively speaking, we had, maybe that was 10%. I know math a little. But my point is that we have had to look at every one of our business processes. We haven't laid off a person. I understand that the PPP has helped us do that because we're under 500 people and we can benefit from a little bit of that stimulus. But even before the PPP came up, CFO, CEO, myself, we got together and said, okay, where do we think we'll be? What can we do to adjust and just keep the company open, keep the employees employed? And really, they ask me every single day, so what's going to be? What is our worldwide projection for revenue every which way? And I tell them a very simple line. This is not meant to be a joke, even though I do it with a little smile. I said, my crystal ball ran out of batteries and I can't find replacements. So I can't be cheeky with a board of directors. I can't be cheeky with my CEO, but who knows? Are we going to be open on May 3rd in Georgia? I got a guy who told me today, I can't make a meeting Friday morning because I need a haircut and I will not have gotten a haircut in 2 months. And that's more important than coming to a meeting. Now, I use that as an example. We are helter-skelter trying to figure out what is going to be. The curve, the flattening of the curve is a medical thing. It's not a business thing. I mean, I don't understand it technically. But what I do know is that until the world opens up, and I don't expect it to be fully open through even the summer, we've got to find adaptive ways to do our business. So we are renewing training programs online where we used to do training in the field. We're doing things that are compensating for the market Today, from a P&L point of view, through this moment in time on the 22nd of April, we are on track. But I would not tell you that that's the same for consumer businesses, for restaurants. Restaurant business here in our town, both my grown sons live in Manhattan. There are 0 restaurants there. It's a different world. So the service economies are sucking wind big time. The industrial economies are anchored, I think, and bolstered by the fact that everybody is clawing to figure out how to stay vital and how to keep their employees. Because when this comes to pass, we still need our prized employees, our valued teams, to be vital and to do the work that we do. So it has been not so much that the business today, knock wood, has taken a huge hit on the P&L, but it's all about our adaptive behaviors to get through and to maintain connectivity, morale, motivation, while we still try to do business. And business is being done not to meteoric fashion, but it's being done as opposed to what I thought would happen a month ago, which was an absolute shutdown. I thought we would be dead as a business and as an economy. People need to maintain and to still prosper to their futures. So the business economy in the world is actually surviving and limping, and we're doing the same.
Thanks, Steve. That was a very thoughtful answer. I know we've all had time to sit back over the days and kind of think about various aspects of how this pandemic is affecting professional and personal lives. I myself have stopped using the term return to normalcy. There is no such thing as normal, like a normal time from now on. And, as a macroeconomist, we were thinking at first a month ago about, hey, V-shaped recovery. It's interesting how all that is out the window now also. People are just trying to figure out what the new landscape will be when we get there. But let's go to Siwat, because, you're in the entrepreneurial space. You have a relatively new business, and now, hey, this is different.
So we were scheduled to go to Expo West, which was in Pasadena, California, early March. And I had bought a ticket. Our supplier was featuring us at their booth. So all I needed was my co-founder and I and a small team just to buy the ticket, and we didn't have to pay for a booth. We didn't have to do anything. We could show our product to potential buyers. Everyone from Publix to Whole Foods to Trader Joe's was going to be there. And about a week before, we started getting emails saying Whole Foods pulled out, Publix pulled out. And so, but the event didn't necessarily cancel yet. So the day before, they sent an email at like 10 p.m. saying, okay, we're postponing the event. So there was some money lost there. Our biggest sales channel is through retail stores. So we're in about 20 to 30 different retail stores in Manhattan and Brooklyn. We have some sales online as well. We have some subscription models where we deliver our beverage to corporate offices. So they have a refrigerator full of things like water, our beverage, Pepsi, Coke, kombucha, cold brew. And so with everybody working from home, all those corporate accounts have been put on hold. So what we did as fast as we could is we transitioned everything to our e-commerce website. And we did that within a span of 3 to 4 days. And we focused all of that. And we put all our marketing efforts into social media and just getting our brand out there so that we could drive traffic to our website. And I mean, we have increased sales, and that's our way of surviving right now. CPG brands in general, the big brands and the ones that people recognize and know are doing well in supermarkets and retail stores. Water's doing really well. I do believe Coke has actually experienced some dips in sales, but the sparkling water industry is doing very, very well. Your LaCroix, your Polars, all those are doing well. We price ourselves as a premium functional beverage. And so right now, premium products, with everything that's going on, is taking a slight hit. We were hoping that we would be able to kind of get into some of the larger retail stores before kind of everything was put on hold. Mid-March would have been kind of the product category review for us for a lot of places like Whole Foods, Publix, and Trader Joe's. But that's been put on hold for another 60 days. So we did take some hits, but we're still standing and we're trying to maneuver our way through this. The good thing is that in food and beverage, we've kept those conversations going, and a lot of those buyers are very willing to work with small brands, just because they understand the kind of the landscape and the environment that people are going through. So once things kind of pick up and the category reviews are up and running again, we'll hope to get in front of those people, and hopefully we'll get into some of the larger retailers. Yeah.
I am actually going to ask a follow-up question. I'm going to break out of my everyone. I'll come back to Emma in a minute to get her response. But do you see any opportunities through this for you, or is it more just, okay, we need retail stores to really open up to more than they have, and then we can consider strategies?
I think a direct-to-consumer strategy is always the best approach. I'm not, to be honest with you, the CPG, the food and beverage kind of business, dealing with distributors is just really, really difficult, and I find it archaic. If anybody ever comes up with a very interesting way to disrupt that model, I think it would be fantastic. But direct-to-consumer allows us to collect the information that we need to interact with our customers, to develop our brand. Whenever you're starting something new, I would say the priority and the most important thing is to understand your customer more than anything else. Why and when are they buying your product? Why are they buying your product? How much are they willing to pay for your product? Why do they like your product? Why are they choosing your product? And if you can provide them with a direct channel and a way to interact and let them know that you're always there and you're listening to them, I think that's the most important thing. In regards to scale and economies of scale, distribution is important. But I will always choose direct to consumer first because of the way we can develop our brand and connect with customers. Once you get that data, I think taking that data and connecting with distributors, it gives you more leverage and negotiating power to say, hey, listen, like, this is the geographical location of people buying our beverage in Northern Jersey, and you have X amount of retail stores in this area, and we're driving traffic to both those places as well. So, and there should be no reason you're gonna take as much of a margin as you are now when we're driving all that traffic to those retail stores anyway. So that type of data is important. So the more I can interact and connect with my customers, I think is more valuable. So that's what I would say.
All right, thank you, Siwat. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
How about you, Emma?
Uh-oh, you're about to get an accountant's perspective on this.
Oh, you said you were very risk averse. I'm curious.
This is true. This is true. You know, this is a really very, very serious and very sad time for a lot of families all across the United States. Most all companies are having to furlough or terminate employees. The SBA loan bailout that was enacted, you know, the Paycheck Protection Plan, that's only going to, hopefully what that's going to do is propel businesses to make their payroll, but there's all sorts of other operating expenditures that go into the mix, right? Your lease payments, and depending on how much property you have, and some of the other overhead elements you want to consider. So I think the economic fallout from this remains to be seen, because people are going to be missing their lease payments. So there is going to be a trickle effect potentially on property management and commercial real estate. Whereas prior, you see a subprime mortgage meltdown in the consumer residential arena, you may see a commercial real estate fallout from this. That being said, if I'm a student right now, and this is sort of similar to when I was a student during the Great Recession, I would dig deep. I would get on as many Zoom calls as you can, connect with as many alumni and mentors as you can, learn the skills necessary right now so you can market yourself very well later. Because what you want to be is a valuable employee. Because during these times, businesses have to make very difficult decisions. And so if you drive value for your business in your position day in and day out, there's no question that you are indispensable in your role. So a couple things you could do is learn how to communicate effectively. Take business writing seriously. Take public speaking seriously. Join Toastmasters. Get out there and figure out how to do coding. If computer science scares you, you should be scared because it's the wave of the future and you want to jump into things like that. If you don't know how to use Excel now and you're a business finance major, you want to get into that. You want to start reading some ebooks or doing demos on YouTube with Excel. Learn how to use basic formulas, VLOOKUP, pivot tables, HLOOKUP. Start doing the things that you can control because there's going to be a lot of economic fallout that none of us are going to be able to control, but we can focus on some of the positives. And from my perspective, I think that moving forward, this is the modernization of business that is sort of required, right? Working remotely, rethinking your strategies, cost savings, travel, meals, entertainment. Are all of these indirect and direct expenses really necessary to generate the revenue that you need to, both survive and prosper? So some good questions and maybe some restructuring of what business looks like today. There's a lot of positive impacts that will happen for both the landscape professionally. Maybe more economic opportunities will come up because of this. With remote work, you could be here in Los Angeles working for a company in New Jersey. Or, with the reduced amount of freeway traffic in Los Angeles, you're seeing the air quality go back up. So there's a lot of good things happening here that hopefully will continue. But what you want to focus on right now is just what you can control, because that'll keep you in a positive headspace.
Yeah, which is absolutely so important right now, is thinking about people's emotional well-being and mental health through all of these tremendous stresses. I mean, even if you yourself are not directly impacted, just seeing the news articles of the millions and millions of people every week who are filing for unemployment, for example, and just feeling like how disruptive it is to everyone's families. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, hey, I hope I could just say, Emma, that was genius. What you just said was eloquent and genius, and I appreciate you saying all that. And it is a new world order, but I think it's all, you got to keep it positive.
Thank you.
I think, I think Siwat might have said it, but thinking about how this crisis has basically led to some really creative solutions. Maybe it was Steve who said it, but thinking about even in New York City, just how businesses are good businesses, creative businesses are pivoting and managing to stay afloat and learning some really, really useful lessons moving forward about, as Emma said, like what are ways in which we can cut costs and still retain our mission, basically stay true to our mission, and hopefully help our employees along the way too, and our customers. Like you said, Emma, think about the benefits of working from home is, wow, we suddenly have a lot more time to do things and really take care of ourselves. It's worth exploring as we move forward. So yeah, but obviously we still have to get a handle on this huge global crisis going on. But you're right, long-term strategies, it's going to be really interesting to see what the business landscape looks like. So we have a couple of questions coming in. So I'm going to just throw out a few of them, and any of you that want to respond, feel free. We had one question that says, how did you actually land your first job? Like, how did that process come about? For me, I've noticed with my students, the biggest question that comes up is, okay, we're here, we're taking classes. We understand, like in the Wall Street program, that there is a guest speaker who has a job. We just don't understand how to make that leap literally across the classroom from where we're sitting to the front. I think that's the biggest mystery that students have. And so that's one of several questions which has come up.
You know, the answer to that question has existed in my career from literally my first job till where I am today. And it's about networking and being out there. Now, you know, networking is not an easy thing to do when you're not secure about who you're talking to, when you're potentially intimidated by who you're talking to. You talk about going to that Wall Street semester and being across the table from somebody who's employed. Well, I can tell you that I've been hired by over the years, all the years, and I have hired people who have established a connectivity simply through, it used to be an American tradition, we used to shake hands. Remember that? Before we did this, right? But nonetheless, the security that you project by simply introducing yourself to someone. I got my first job at Milton Bradley Electronics, the toy company up in Massachusetts, where I was going to be because of a girlfriend after I graduated from school. And I networked with somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody because I needed a job. And I did not know anything about the geography or anything in the business. But hi, my name is Steve. I came across in a certain way. And you get your breaks when you make connections, when you sustain connections, and you have something compelling to say. Nobody's expecting a new graduate to know legitimately anything about the real world. That's why you go to college, not necessarily to learn about the real world, but to grow up, to be mature and confident enough to then say, hi, my name is Emma. And I use that name because it's right in front of me. But whoever we are, it's about having the gumption, it's about having the security, having the confidence to break the ground by simply maintaining that or establishing that networking connection. From there, your personality and your pursuits, after the first job, every other job is built as a building block on the accomplishments of the last one. But that first break is all about having security to say, hi, my name is blank. I'm interested in your company because I feel like I can bring a certain benefit. And it starts the cycle, which continues forever. That's my experience.
My first job out of Drew was I answered an ad. It was a newspaper ad. There was a thing called newspapers. And it was a simple ad that said, busy executive of an international company looking to hire someone to learn my business. Call this number, went in for an interview, went in for 3 interviews, got the job, sold myself. After that, I was there for 28 years, but I only had 2 other jobs in between for a year each, or for 2 years, one for 2 years and one for 2 each. And both of those people, I met drinking out of a keg in Foster or Hearst. And they were both friends and people that I networked with through the years and kept connections with. And networking is it. And it's having that confidence to, as he said, as simple as saying, hi, my name is, and this is what I can do to help you. These are my strengths. These are my weaknesses, but I'm open and coachable. And I think you will find that your education at Drew provides you with a fantastic base to go out to the world with confidence that at the moment you don't know you have, but you should have.
Thanks, Rob. How are you, Siwat?
My first job I got because I was observing the lab, and I got that through a friend of mine in college, actually a Drew roommate. His father was the person who ran the lab. So yeah, so it was definitely through a network. I've always kind of had this interest in just understanding people's careers paths. So I would always just ask people how they got to where they are. I always enjoyed hearing people's experiences. So maybe that's a different way to approach networking. Everybody's in different industries, and I've always just wanted to hear their story. Because for so long, I spent grad school and all this time just trying to figure out what it is that I really wanted to do. And so I talked to a lot of people, and that was kind of always my approach. I always felt like if you ask for people to share their stories, even if they'll find 10 minutes to to offer up their story and tell you how they got to where they got, what they're currently doing and things like that. And I don't know, I've always taken that approach, and I think for the most part, people do remember, because I always feel like most people get the, hey, this is me, these are my qualifications. But if you actually approach somebody and ask them for advice and understand what their career path is, I think you make a longer lasting relationship and they remember you. Because most of the time I feel like people are always looking for something. But if you can just get them to understand that you're really just trying to figure out what their career path is and how they found and got to where they've gotten. I've always approached networking that way.
Thanks. Emma?
So I got my first job from the USC Career Center. So I'm a big advocate of using your Career Center and your alumni resources to your advantage, especially at Drew. You have incredible access to professionals who work, on Wall Street, executives in insurance companies. You've got vice presidents of marketing, all sorts of people, entrepreneurship, accounting, legal, whatever you want to do. The only advice I would tell people is you're not going to find your dream job sitting on Craigslist or Indeed right this second. You've got to be a little bit realistic. Maybe you're 21, 22, early 20s. Your career is a marathon, not a sprint. So it's okay to do something for a couple of years just to learn how to be a professional in the world and to get your feet under you. It doesn't have to be specifically within your degree or even specifically something that you dreamt up. But I think people really have a lot of respect for people who work hard and try to build their skills over time. And you have more than enough time, 40, 50, 60 years, to build whatever career you want from right now. And maybe you just look at your career in 5-year increments or 2-year increments, and that's okay. That's kind of how the world is right now.
I remember getting some good advice from one of my many guest speakers over the years in Wall Street. And what they said is, think about developing your own board, a group of people that you meet that you just connect with in some way. Kind of like what Siwat said, you learn about their story and it sounds really interesting and you just hit it off with them. And so you think, again, there's several people that naturally gravitate into that space that you share your accomplishments, and you share when you have questions or advice. And the best of those connections, eventually turns into a two-way street, and they share things with you. And as both of you get more experienced, then you end up being on the boards of other people. And it's a really, really valuable thought process, I think, because it sets up some resources to you that you're never alone. Because what you're hearing here, this idea of networking, is it takes a community to be successful. And so using Drew's community resources, whether it's the Career Center, whether it's alums, whether it's faculty, whether it's dedicated staff like Carol Bassi, that's what is going to help launch your career. And it's hard for students to get out of that more passive classroom mentality and into the just putting yourself out there. But the first step, I think Siwat said it really well, just learn how to listen. People love talking about themselves. And so just listen to what they have to say. And even if you find that it is not the career for you necessarily, you'll still potentially learn some really valuable lessons that you can use along the way.
Hey, if I could add, I'd just like to say, if you happen to be lucky enough to have a vision for where you'd like to be in 2 to 5 years, try to find a mentor who has already accomplished the things and is doing what you see yourself doing 5 years from now, and learn and ask and see how they've gotten there. What you described with the 5 people on your board is basically the mastermind principle. And who you surround yourself with is going to be where you end up, both with your friends and your business connections.
Right. We had a couple of other questions. I'm gonna kind of flip back and forth between them, but I'm also cognizant of the time. And correct me if I'm wrong, Carol, but it looks like we have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, we can go a little bit longer if the questions keep coming in, but ideally.
Let's see, I had a specific market question, which I'll ask in a minute. And kind of a related question is, what's been the happiest moment of your career? Like, that's a question that's just come through. Happiest moment so far, let's say. How about you, Emma? Because you're smiling.
So the happiest moment thus far, definitely passing the CPA exam for me. I saw it as another skill in the tool belt, and it was a moment of relief. It was 2-3 years of worth of work from the day I graduated from Drew until I was able to get to that point. So it was happy for many reasons, but mostly just to be reflective on the last 2 to 3 years of hard work. It's not always fun when you have to work super hard at something, but on the other side of it, it's very rewarding concept to have to work to get to something. So I think that was definitely the happiest moment thus far.
Well, thanks. And it's a great accomplishment. So you should really be proud of yourself. How about you, Siwat?
I have to say the happiest moment was finding out identifying what I really enjoyed doing and what I wanted to do in my professional career. And knowing that it's a process. And once I came to terms with that, I was pretty happy. I enjoy what I do now, and I know it's a process. I know everything that comes with it. I know the challenges. I know that the odds are stacked against you whenever anybody starts anything. But I am happy that I started it, and I enjoy what I do. So I would say overall, that's what makes me happy. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Rob or Steve, you might have more happy moments in your careers.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I quite frankly, I've never been asked this question before. I've had a lot of fun in my lifetime. A lot of failures, and I've overcome a lot of failures. So I have a lot of happiness comes from the fact that I did have faith in that when I did fail, when I was down at my worst, that I was able to overcome it, just like people told me I wouldn't. The happiest moments came when I was, quite frankly, succeeding with others as a team. I was fortunate enough to be in the upper echelon of leading a insurance company, and got to have breakfast with the likes of Brian Tracy and shared the stage speaking with Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and John Maxwell and the guy from Pursuit of Happiness. I can't even remember his name, but those were great times, but those weren't happy times. I found that, you think that was great, it was awesome. But the happy times came when we as a team worked together to achieve goals that served other people and helped other people, and watching other people succeed. Really, when I got my first feeling of helping someone succeed and change their life because they improved in what they were doing, the product we were offering was saved a family and the death of someone. When someone who came to work for us and looking for an opportunity to better their lives became independently wealthy, those things to me made me feel good about the selections and the career I took on.
Thanks, Rob. We're similar in that aspect. I drive a lot of pleasure by seeing the success of others, and I certainly see it especially through my students. And so listening to Emma here and watching her career soar, or seeing other students and being able to help make that alteration in their lives and really give them increased choices of what can make them happy is really what motivates me.
That's great.
So, how about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'm toggling between, you asking the most accomplishments, or you're asking happiness? And I know you're asking happiness. And, accomplishments, we're all accomplished. We've all done things. We wouldn't be where we are without having, great stories about a business deal or a business creation. But happiness, the thing that and it goes kind of back to the earlier statement I was discussing my career. You grow up in a secure way. You feel like you know stuff. You think you're smart. You're affable. You get along with people. You have a good social life. Then you go out into the real world, and you're not really all that. One of the most humbling moments I had in my life, and this goes back probably 35 years ago, is I was walking through O'Hare, the airport, and I looked at the number of gentlemen and ladies who were wearing suits and carrying briefcases. I thought I was something until that moment, and I realized what the real world was. So fast forward, from that point, till about my early 40s, where I actually thought I could defend what I knew, could lead legitimately, and then was being accepted by the businesses that I work for. I've had an interesting career where I've done the same thing in my career, sales and marketing and strategy, for 40 years, but I've done it in very disparate industries. So when I went into managing and being the president of an addiction recovery nonprofit, and went and spent time bringing this business into the American healthcare system, I had zero background in healthcare. I'm the laugh of my family. We are New York City suburbanites. And now I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, running a company involved in agriculture and land management and tractors. I didn't know what a skid steer was until a year and a half ago when I interviewed for this role. So the most happiness I've had were the moments where I was able to come to work and much like Rob, influence and help shepherd others, but be seen as legitimate. When I was 22 years old, I was the smartest guy in the world, and that just because I had a Drew education, that I should be all that in a bag of chips. The truth is that we have to grow into our careers. We have to spend, again, I call it windshield time, I call it calendar time, lots and lots of time really understanding the movers and drivers, not only the mechanics of business, but the human aspects and all of the variables. And at the time, and it started when I was about 40, which is a little bit ago yet, but the time that I started to be able to open my mouth in my job and have people listen and say, wow, because earlier in those days, remember that first mistake I shared with you? It was when I opened my mouth thinking I was legitimate, and the audience was looking at me like I was not a joke in a bad way, but I was a little bit ahead of myself in being confident in my assertions. So, happiness in here, in the heart, getting up every day, going to work, a lot of good jobs, great career fulfillment. But when I finally earned what I considered to be the legitimate right to be at the table that I was at, it felt pretty darn good.
So, Marc, what do you think about giving everyone a moment to share a final piece of advice?
That's exactly what I was going to do. So Steve just talked. I'll give him a chance to get a drink or something. Let's go with Rob. We'll kind of go in order of how we started.
I would say you're going to graduate from Drew University and you're a student. My suggestion would be to continue to be a student till the time when you can no longer read, breathe, learn. I think it's important in any field you go into, and also to study outside of your field. Learn, keep learning, be a student, be open-minded. As he said, don't do and make the mistakes that maybe some of us have made where we thought, as he put it, we were all that when we were 22 or 23 years old. Be humble, be open, and be willing, and be coachable, and be a constant learner of things that are important to you and that can make you better at what you're trying to accomplish in life.
Thanks, Rob. Emma?
Yeah, I would say if I'm a student at Drew right now, understand your opportunity. It's an incredible school with wonderful people who are here to support you and help you, and make sure really that you are successful. It's a very rare thing that people take their time out of their busy lives to support you. But I'm telling you, at Drew, people are willing to do that day in and day out for you. And we are all here to see each and every one of those students be just as successful as we are, if not more successful, and rooting and cheering you on every step of the way. Study up on what you don't know. Take every opportunity with a positive attitude. Get up after you get kicked to the ground a few times. Everything's going to be just fine.
Thank you, Emma. And I really appreciated what you said before about failure being, or lack of failure being an unwillingness to push yourself. I think so much of the learning process is failing over and over and over again, and just picking yourself up and learning from those mistakes. So then you can make, as Siwat probably agrees, new mistakes. So, Siwat, how about you?
I would say it true. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes. I think you're in an environment that supports that. I mean, I've always had professors where asking those questions and making those types of mistakes, they've always been supportive. They've corrected you. They point you in the right direction, but you're in a very safe environment. I would also say stay humble. And there are going to be points in time where I think the path that you're going through doesn't necessarily seem to, the dots don't connect, but trust that at some point they will connect. I mean, I worked in healthcare, and now I have a beverage that was originally supposed to help people for chemotherapy and pregnant women that were going through morning sickness. We pivoted from there, but ultimately the dots do connect, and just trust that your path will eventually, all the dots will connect. And try and connect with as many people as you can at Drew. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to learn about people's stories, their career paths.
Thank you, Siwat. And Steve, I'm going to have you wrap this up.
Well, thanks. You know, I'm thinking back on my kids are 32 and 27, and when they graduated from college, we talked about career, but I don't know what I want to do, and I'm not really sure of what I want to do. So my message is about don't be too hard on yourself. I don't know how much has really changed. When I was in school, we declared our major end of sophomore year. I know freshman kids, my wife's kids, who one of her daughters was a freshman a couple years ago in college, had to declare major, or I thought, when she entered. The world hasn't changed so much that any of us know what we really, really want to do. We have inclinations, we have role models, we have orientations, but don't be too hard on yourself to know the example. I told my boys, in the first 5 years, I don't care if you change jobs 5 times, in pursuit of figuring out who you are as an adult, what you really like about the work world, and then, you know, after 5 years-ish, you got to get stable and start building on something. So, you know, the education part, we walk out feeling really, really tall. I remember to this day, May 17th, 1980, being on the back of the Mead Hall lawn, graduating with a degree, and being super psyched to walk and say, I am at the top of the pinnacle. But then you go from the top of that right down to the bottom of the workforce as a newbie. But do you really know? Those who don't know right off the bat what they want to do forever and for always, chill. Take the first few years to explore. Don't be afraid. The failure words that I've heard from my colleagues, absolute. Do not be afraid to make a mistake, because if you never took a risk, you're not really doing justice to your potential. But at the end of the day, it's about letting your good judgment, letting you build from the experiences you have, and careers will define themselves. But it may not be in the first 1 year, it may not be in the first 10 years. But don't be too hard on yourself. Build, network, learn from the experiences, and before you know it, you'll be gray and going to your 40th reunion.
Even virtually.
Even virtually.
Virtually, right?
Everything's virtual right now. I owe so many people beers. And so, like, well, you'll get them eventually, just not yet. Bars are going to be a while before they reopen. So, but thank you all so much for taking the time to do this this evening, or in Emma's case, mid-afternoon. And it was I think this has been really, really valuable for our students, both the ones that are here right now, but also the ones that will watch this later. It's great because some of what you've talked about parallels a lot of what we tell our students at Drew, and something like the New York programs, like the UN program, like the Wall Street program or Social Entrepreneur, we just hammer it home to them about networking, the importance of just learning to talk, learning to listen, and being more dynamic in that aspect, and really finding out who you are and what interests you and what doesn't interest you. And you can only figure that out by starting these conversations. If there's anything we can ever do for you, just please let us know. Again, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I just want to second Mark. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I'm going to push an email out to our students next week with a list of all the panels that have been done and the links to the recordings. And, you know, we have been seeing like views on YouTube, you know, being greater than participation. The students are in class all day, in Zoom classes all day. And so it's, you know, it's hard to get them to another one at 5:30 at night, but I know they value it. I've heard from so many students who have watched the recorded versions of prior panels who have thanked me and are now asking me for other things that, you know, maybe we can do in May. So they are seeing it and they appreciate your time.
thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.